the door. Good morning, everybody. Everybody was dragged himself out of bed and welcome to this presentation about web and mobile applications. This is going to be fun today because during the last days I had a problem finding the network, so this may become a presentation about web, about the internet that's not there. So I bought all kinds of things. Tablets here, I have a smartphone here. All this may turn out useless because I can't get connected. The last time I checked, I was connected, so if this turns out to be reliable, we may be in business, but unfortunately I couldn't prepare myself for this network here because I didn't have one. But I survived. Good. I'm sure you've all heard about HTML5 and JavaScript as a package. I'm sure you know that this is going to save the world somehow. And I thought maybe as a starting point we should have a look at why this is, where this hype is coming from. And there are basically two reasons for this. One is more or less technical, and the other is coming from the user perspective. Not too long ago, building web applications meant plugging together various different technologies like ActiveX, like JavaScript, plugins like Silverlight, Flash, whatever, just to get around the fact that HTML back then was a kind of a stack of static pages layered on top of each other. So moving in your application meant jumping pages. You pressed a button, which meant refresh that was necessary, and the whole page was updated. That was a very bad experience, and as I said, people tried to get around this by integrating things into the web application. This made everything very unreliable, very unstable, and very difficult from the developer's perspective. This has changed a bit because HTML5 as a standard, or HTML as a standard, has evolved a lot in recent years and has become added a lot of more features, which, for example, support for video, for audio. There are things like local storage, media queries. You have extensive attributes in the markup which you can use to plug in things to come to them. And all this has made it possible for third-party vendors to develop frameworks which you can just use in your pages and which integrate seamlessly. This has led to the fact that HTML and JavaScript as a package is about to drive out plugins such as Silverlight, Flash, of the market, and it is becoming something like a standard right now. The second thing for this HTML hype is not too long ago we had those things here. Back then they were called PDAs, and well, using those I could get connected, but it was A, not a very good experience, and B, not available possible with all devices to use the net. That changed when Apple came on the market with the iPhone. Everything just blew up. And right now we're used to just using those things. We have them in the pocket, we get them out and just go online and check for something, and we are off again. This is normal experience now. We expect this of those devices. This has also led to some pressure on the Windows side to support those things. Now we have smartphones, we have tablets here, we have netbooks, we have all kinds of devices, and people expect just to use them. If I, as a software vendor, want to support all this, it's a nightmare. There's iOS, there's Android, there was Windows Mobile, Windows Phone 7. If I wanted to go native on those devices, well, that's horrible. Also, there were those technologies we mentioned, like ActiveX, like those plugins. It was too much technologies. And people began looking for a way to make things easier, and they began turning or looking towards the browser, which is becoming so attractive as a development platform because it's an infrastructure that's already available on all those devices, on the desktop, on the smartphone, on the tablet. You have a browser already installed. And it's about the only platform on those things that's not locked into some proprietary ecosystem. Meaning the web applications you write, in theory, would be accessible by all those devices there on the table. The desktop, the smartphone, the tablet. So it's a perfect platform for line of business applications. The business logic and the data in this case, or when we talk about connected mobile apps, is on the server, which means it is in a controlled environment, and it's just the client connecting from outside to fetch data, but your data and your logic is in your hands. That's what I'm trying to say. One important thing is that the mobile internet does not exist. Regardless of what kind of device I'm using to connect, it's the same infrastructure I'm using. It's the internet. So there's one application that's served to all sorts of clients. This means by extension that those applications in some form need to adjust themselves to the client that's asking for something, for a page, for example. Why this is very attractive on the one hand, it's also a big problem. And this is because the devices which are trying to connect come in all kinds of forms. There are very different form factors. Netbooks, tablets, smartphones. There are different screen resolutions, there's different hardware in those things. Some have GPS, some have a camera on board, there may be a G sensor, so users might expect your application or your UI to adapt itself when you turn the thing. It's all very different expectations and capabilities and different usage patterns. Again, coming back to the smartphone, users will expect your application to work when they're using it single-handedly. So everything must be in reach for your thumb, for example. That's different on the desktop where you're used to placing things on the top of the page, like in a toolbar. So you might not end up with an application that just doesn't work, or that is not what users expect it to look like. On the tablet, you'll probably be using it this way. So also you have the key features aligned at the bottom or at the top. So it's not so easy. This means that using the same user interface to service all the requests coming in from the outside is probably not a very good idea. It may work in some cases, but it may also lead to a situation where where the user experience just isn't satisfactory. It may lead to a fact where information is not accessible. It may lead to a fact where you're using resources such as images because you've developed on the desktop that takes too long to load, for instance. Bandwidth is an issue on a smartphone, for example. Just for information, I've prepared a table here showing some screen resolutions, which is very interesting, I think, because at the top, for example, there's the iPhone, which has a very small display, 640 by 960 displays, pixels on the display. Compare this to the laptop, which is this trusty thing here, which is 70 inches display 1920 by 1080 pixels. That's slightly different, right? In the middle, there are tablets. There also is a netbook somewhere, which comes in 10 inches, for example, 1000 pixels horizontal by 800 vertically. That's very similar to a desktop, but not on the smartphone. That's something else. Just to give you an idea what this might mean, this is, well, it is a news page, or parts of it, as it might be displayed on a netbook. There's some news items. There's a second column here. This is an ad, which is already off to the side a bit, so already on this kind of thing, I need to use the scroll bar to get at this point on the page, or this part of the page. But it even gets worse when you take another device, such as a tablet. This time it's a portrait mode, and while I can still view the news items at the parts of the page that are here to the right are inaccessible unless I begin scrolling, which is not a very fun user experience. Going further down to the iPhone, for example, here we are in a situation where it just doesn't work anymore. I could use a lot of features for making this smaller, for scaling this down, but then type would be too small to read it. So the UI may have to be different for all these device classes. That's what I'm trying to say. An iPhone in portrait mode. Okay. So what does this mean for me as a developer? There are different ways or different strategies to address this problem. There's of course the option of going native, which for most of you probably isn't an option, but for maybe, if you know that all your users are going to use an iPhone, for example, you may be willing to make the investment, but for all others, it's just too big an issue to tackle, I think. You may try to ignore the problem, which also may work if the client devices which are connecting are not too different. If it's just tablets, for example, and desktops, you may get away with serving static content which you've prepared, static pages. But as I said already, this may no longer work with something like this here. If you are in a position where you have so different device classes to support, there are different strategies to go about this. One is to use something which is called a responsive web design, which is basically the idea of taking all content which is positioned statically, which is sized statically out of the page, and so make the markup itself scalable as far as possible. So you get in a situation where the page itself, even though it's unchanged still, can be adapted as far as possible to the screen size which the user has in front of his face. You can combine this strategy with intelligent you either put on the server or on the client. Having JavaScript on the client side means there could be code running which takes action on the screen resolution, for example, on the events fired by the browser itself. For example, when I turn this thing, I might act on it to have a JavaScript code running on the client in the browser and change the layout of a page, or change items, image sizes, type size, whatever. On the server, when the request is coming in, there's some kind of ID information coming in along with the request, which you can use to try to determine which kind of devices is about to connect or is making the request. There are packages, JavaScript packages out there, which try to do this for you. They take the incoming request and try to match this to a database and try to give you an answer in terms of if there's an iPhone or is this a tablet. So combining this, in theory at least, gives you an application which can adjust itself to the situation it finds on the client. So coming now to the CXP, the compiled Xbase++ pages, as the server technology we are promoting at the moment. First of all, we have 2 sessions on the CXP. I think one has taken place already, it was in German. What about the English one? It hasn't...
Coming today.
Okay.
Or tomorrow morning, first.
Okay. So, some of you have no idea what CXP is, right? You could raise your hands, please? Okay. I was supposed to build this presentation on top of the other one, so I was expecting you to have at least an idea what CXP is. But seeing you don't, I have no choice. I'm going to ignore this. No. The overall position of this thing is to provide connectivity to the backend. That's what it's for, which means it's running on the server. That's point 1. This is where you have your business logic. So this is no JavaScript. This is Xbase code. Xbase code that runs and takes actions on the data it finds, on the requests made from the client, to give back a response in the form of HTML markup, an answer to the request made by the client. It may supply functionality, it may supply complete pages. This depends on what the user does on the client side. As I said, in former times, HTML meant static pages. I had a button on a page, I clicked on it, which resulted in a request sent to the server, which answered with a new page result, which was put on top of it. With JavaScript running on the client and Ajax, which you may have heard of as a technology, it's possible to make asynchronous requests to the server to just replace parts of the page, to update parts of the page, or to fetch just that data which you process on the client to do certain things. This is meant by supplying functionality here. This may be a request which, as a response, just gets XML, for example, with the data on a certain customer, for example. Okay, so to see this in action, I'm going to rely on my trusty laptop here, and I'll try to go into the CXP sample collection. So if you have installed the conference build, you should be able to find something like this installed. There's a start menu item, I think it's called Windows Samples or something like this, which brings you to this page. This is the sample collection, where there's just some more or less complete applications or pages as an introduction to the technology. Let's look at the first, or the most essential example there is, which is Hello World, kind of. This is the CXP page. This is a file which resides on your web server. CXP, as I said, is a part of a web server. You might think of it like this. And when someone requests a page, the request is being routed to the CXP page. Okay? There's an URL which says, for example, myapplication/myform.cxp. This will cause the web browser to call your code to get a response. And the response can be made of, can be constructed using either static HTML mixed with Xbase++ code, which is what you see here. At the top, there's a standard HTML markup. There's a body tag, there's a header tag, which they use today, And at the bottom, same thing here. There's another text, here's the closing body tag. In the middle, there's a code section, which is opened by the smaller sign, %, and this is Xbase++ code. C text is a string, C expression is a string, and this is output here using this command, and output here means it creates HTML, it creates markup. So when this runs, what comes as an end result is an HTML page or an HTML snippet. This is an example where HTML markup is mixed with Xbase code again. So this gives a line, hello, today is evaluate expression. Today is this one here. It's Donnerstag, which is Thursday in German, and the date is the 19th of April and so on. So a very simple page, but it's still dynamic. If we browse to this page tomorrow, it would be another day, I think it will be Friday. You get the idea.
Just produce a text code that there must have no models, there's no declarations or very automatic.
No, you don't need this. It's just a writer code in the page. It has a certain context, but it's not as hard as in the function, for example. You can just write your code getting private variables where you store values into, which you work on them in the code below.
So you write the code and then what? The code is what, a script, it's compiled, it's linked, what happens?
It's compiled. It's compiled automatically. You have a CXP file, .cxp file on your server, which gets compiled into a DLL automatically. There's no build process that you have to start or something. It's being done automatically, and even if you change this page while it's live on the server, I can do this. I can try to do it. I have to find my web directory. It should be samples. And this was the Hello CXP page, which is what was on display there. I could change this line here.
Mach date plus 1. Mach date plus 1. That's the expression to it.
Like this. Okay. I just save this file, go back to the browser, do a refresh, and now it's Friday. I didn't compile anything, it's being done automatically for you.
Is it compiled every time the page is called, or is it only compiled once?
It's only compiled once. When the system notices that there's been a change on the source. You can change this a bit, but that's the basic idea. This gives the DLL, which is on the web server and remains there to serve all subsequent requests unless there's a change in the source. But you don't have to go on the server to say pboot, for example. Now, I think I've just made a friend in Andreas because that was supposed to be the content of the session. Very bad. Okay. So you get the idea. So I can take plain HTML code, have it on my page as static content, and I can mix it with Xbase++ logic, which can be any code you can think of. You can open databases, you can do all the stuff you can do with Xbase. Now, we've seen the simple header example. You can take this further and just have a look into the sample collection to get an idea what you can do with this. But you can make this as complex as you like. This is an example for a grid which uses data coming from the database. In this case, it's a jQuery grid. jQuery is a JavaScript framework which is being used in the page to construct this UI here, this UI component. And I hope the leap wasn't too far, but what I'm trying to state here now. That was a bad idea, I'm sorry. That was a bit too far at the moment. Because this already is an application which is built of several CXP pages. That wasn't what I was trying to show here. I was looking for an example which was a bit more fancy but not so involved. Layout, no, it's not.
Is it the application? Is it an application? Yes.
Is it like
This mobile.
That's what I'm just about to do. I'm in trouble at the moment because I've lost my bearings. What I was trying to get at was that once you have your business logic sort of, what you can do is you pick a JavaScript framework, and there are loads of them available on the internet. You can integrate it in your page, and using the CXP, you can create a front end for your application, well, very easily. And this is what this presentation is about, actually, because to go mobile, the problem isn't on the server, it's in the front end, right? On the client. It's the small display size that's making problems. It's not the server side. And all this functionality, or most of it, you can get in the form of JavaScript frameworks. I've prepared a demo project. Well, there's a good.
So Till, so I understand correctly, you're actually building web pages, but not apps.
With the CXP, yeah.
You build web pages.
Sorry?
So you build web pages.
I build web pages at the moment. CXP is a view engine which sits on a page. It's not an application in terms of I have a framework around it. Not yet. That's the idea we are getting to, but not at the moment. CXP is just one view, one page. So you can create one page and another one, and which makes, well, an application on the client, but on the server it's different files, a list of pages, yes. Okay. Let's try to go to the demo of that. You may have seen it already because it's on our server. That's not good because in Alaska. This is calling out to our Storm server in the cupboard over there, which probably is serving all your requests for the conference build. There's the response. Okay. This is a CXP application. You've seen it maybe. It was created for this event in the hope to provide a session list which you could have on your mobiles going around on site here. But unfortunately there's no infrastructure to serve it. Unfortunately we didn't get it finished. But still, this is a good example, I think, for a web application developed using CXP. Here's a session list, which at this point only has my sessions. I'm sorry about that, but it's test data. What you can do here, I hope you can, keep your fingers crossed, is you can select a session you're interested in. I've clicked on this glasses icon here.
Doesn't do anything there. I tested it.
I think so too. It doesn't do anything. It should actually tag the session. There's something. The icon has changed a bit, right? So now this session is tagged. This is what I want to see. And there's another page. You see how slow this is, but it's just a Fritz box or something in the couple. So please be considerate. Now I've tagged some sessions and I have an agenda list which consists of the session I want to see, which took place on Wednesday, the PostgreSQL, on Thursday, which is today, the parts bank, for example. So this is an example for a CXP application which I've created. And this works on the desktop, as you can see, and it also works, at least I hope it does, on the tablet. Okay, the mixer here, but now this is live entertainment again. I'm right before the point where I disassemble the laptop, right? To pull out the battery. This was your suggestion. Okay. This is fancy technology which is supposed to bring the displays of this thingy here right to the demo. This is an Android tablet which I've pointed to the DevCon app. There seems to be a problem with the signal translation because there's something missing that's on the page here but you can't see it, so it's cut off, I don't know why. But it's the same application, right? There's a small difference, I'm not sure if you noticed. Oh shit, I've turned it. It's on. There's a small difference in the front end, which you may have noticed. The display is smaller. It looks the same because I still have everything arranged in columns, but the menu has changed. Now it's kind of a toolbar, right? There's the sessions page, there's the agenda page, and the line next to each other. On the desktop there was a menu which was a drop down, right? So there was a change which was made because the different devices connected. So this was client-side intelligence. And this functionality was supplied automatically by the framework that I've used to create this application. And to give you an idea about what was required to do this, there also is an iPad here, in case you want to see it on a different device, but I found no way to connect it to the beamer, so it would be you coming up here to have a look at it. Like this, exactly. We are back in business. Okay. This is about the demo project, the application you've just seen. I wanted to boast a bit about all the technologies I've used in it, which is HTML5, of course using JavaScript, of course. I used a framework called Modernizer, which is something that works on the client to change things for me. And I've used the jQuery framework. This sounds pretty exciting, pretty difficult, but in the end what I did was to go online and look for frameworks which already do the work for me. And what I found is something called, the tagline I forgot. What I found was something called the HTML5 Boilerplate. You can find this online, maybe you've heard about it. What it gives you when you go to its website, is a template web project. And this is what I get as the end result in the browser. It's a template which somehow looks very similar to what I've shown you in the DevCon now, right? It's just demo text, of course. It's just placeholders. But this thing is intelligent. It's running on the browser, so it has this layout. It has a pull-down menu. It aligns items next to each other because there's space to do it. When I make this smaller, things change. Oops. Now I have everything aligned in a single column. So I'm now getting to the point where this comes into play. There's not much space, right? So I need to change things in order to still be able to get the information there. So that thing is making changes for me. I haven't done anything. This is a template, right? On my disk, what I got from the HTML boilerplate is a folder which looked like this. There's already prepared for me the index page, which is what you've just seen. There's a web config file for the IIS. There's pre-prepared icons, which is what you get when you take this page, this URL on an iPad, and fix it to your home screen. There's an icon for this page which you just can click on the iPad. And the icon is prepared here. It's a star in this case, but if you change this icon, you only add some kind of branding to the page already. There's a number of JavaScript files which contains the functionality of adjusting this. For example, there are media queries inside which work on the display resolution. So you could go in there and add logic for alternate events, for example. So there's a lot of things already pre-prepared for me. There are images as well. There's styling files, CSS. I haven't changed anything in there to get this DevCon application. What I did, of course, was tailor this a bit, because the original template, you remember, looks like this. So I took some things out and instead added content for the session. But I was using a template. I didn't spend much time on the user interface. That was what I was trying to say. There's a big chance you can find something which already does a lot of what you need to do to support those kind of things. There are different frameworks. This was HTML5 boilerplate. There's jQuery mobile, which is a bit more like what you would expect in a tablet, for example. There's Dojo mobile, which looks a bit more like a native iPhone application if you want. There's various kind of frameworks. So look around, and there's a good chance you find something which already does a lot of what you need to do. Okay, so going a bit down into this project now, because the application. Here, for example, is the index page, which was the session list. me a moment to sort myself. Okay. What I did here was, this is Xbase code, as you can see, is I created databases for storing the session content, for storing the location, this room, the TANI, all of this, and for storing the agenda, which is the connection of the session and the user browsing the list. Now this I process in the Xbase code and use the information I find to customize those blocks of data you had in the template, right? To insert using the CXP. Here the session title, for example. The date the session is going to take place at, the session speaker, and here there should be the session description, which is at this point still the test data found in the template simply because I wasn't able to finish this application. Alright, this still sits in the most part on the framework which I downloaded, the HTML5 boilerplate. The changes I did were in the Xbase code, in the logic. I did copy the index page I found in the template to create another page for the agenda part. But again, I was using the template as a starting point to make small changes to get to the page, to the point which I've just shown you on the tablet and on the desktop. Okay.
Till,
yeah.
What I see that you put actually everything in the CXP page. Would it be possible for a CXP page to download a template from a file and insert it into your app?
That would be possible. A template which is an HTML snippet,
for example, a piece of JavaScript you don't want to include in the source code, but store as a file and include it in your return page.
On the server, you mean?
Yeah, on the server side.
On the server side.
In the CXP page, so you start something, then there's some Xbase code, let's say memory the file, and return it to the client.
Yes.
That is possible.
That is possible using the question mark output command.
Yeah.
You could read in the file and just output it, so it gets inserted into the HTML1.
Okay.
At the top of the page, for example. Okay. So unfortunately, I had to leave out the fun part where I plan to jump around, swinging all those tablets here and show you all the stolen things. But as I said, I'm ill set up with a network here. So actually, oops. What I want to get at now is the next topic, which is the question of how to get this application UI to the user. And there are several ways to do this. The most obvious, of course, is to publish the URL. You tell your users, this is where my application is. For instance, in a web shop, if you like. And from there on, you just point this browser to this URL and can use the application. On the iPhone, for example, there could be instructions included of how to tag this to the home screen to make this more application-like. But that's one way to do it. And you could also use distribution channels such as the App Store on the iPhone, on the Android devices, on Windows Phone 7, there's the App Store. So that your users might expect to be able to go to the store to get your application. That's actually not really a real-life scenario, I think, because usually there's a lot of legal stuff involved. There's some third party getting a big part of your revenue. I think it's 1/3 for Apple. For each download from the store, Apple gets, I think, 1/3 of the price page. So that's probably not what you like.
Also free.
Sorry?
Even for free apps. Even for apps that are free.
You get a third of free. No, free you don't need.
Yeah, 1/3 of free, they get that.
For what's being paid, but there's also.
If I'm going to write an application to my client so that they can view the database, I'm going to give them everything for free. I'll still do it from the App Store, but does the App Store charge me if I'm not charging for my app?
I don't think they charge for free applications, but there's an entry fee just to be able to set the store. Also, those need to be binary applications in this page. There's a large list of requirements which your application must meet to be entered in the store. To make this a binary application, there are packages available such as formfactors, which take your HTML, JavaScript application in all the files and package this in a binary container. So they put this in a small iPhone app, for example, which is what you send to Apple to be put in the store, or to Google, or whatever. That's one way to go. I'm not sure you do this, but it's good to know there's this opportunity, this possibility.
Do I understand correctly that you write a web application and then you go to formfactors.com and they turn it into a downloadable app?
Yeah, something like this. You download a development package which you use to package your HTML and images and everything into a binary package, which you then upload to Apple.
But is it not possible if you create the app, do not upload it to Apple, but put it on your server so that the iPhone or whatever application can download it itself without using the App Store?
No.
So you upload
So
to
if you
the
have
store
an app,
as well.
so why do you have to put something in the App Store if you
Because you'll violate the warranty.
Sorry?
You'll violate the warranty. When something goes wrong with your phone and you take it to the Apple Store to be repaired and they see that there's an app there not from the App Store, you violated your warranty and they won't fix anything.
Oh, okay. Then even Microsoft.
It's just a piece of software.
No, nothing. If it didn't come approved from the App Store, you violated everything. Even if you paid for the extended warranty, if you download something outside of the App Store, you violated everything.
You buy your Apple Store.
That's how Apple maintains control.
I'm not sure this makes much sense, but there is this route if you need to take it for some reason or other.
But in reality, we're not going to use that for the CXP page we made. We're going to use that simply to create the URL, because the icon that we're going to create to put on the App Store is just a URL. It's just going to access the browser, put in the address, and because our application really is sitting on the service bar. So even if we use formfactors, we're just creating a tiny little thing that accesses the URL. So it's for appearance's sake, really. Yeah, it's for sure.
Yeah.
But it's to make it look more professional.
Yeah.
More professional and to meet the expectation of being able to find this thing in the list.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it.
Do you have experience in this kind of thing?
I mean, I researched it at one point, but I didn't really. Because up until now, if you wanted to put something on the App Store, you have to first of all buy a Mac, you have to buy the SDK kit, you have to pay a huge processing fee, wait to get approved that you can get a license so that you can use the app and the SDK to make an application. Then once you've made the application, you have to submit it to the App Store, wait a minimum of 2 to 4 weeks to get feedback from them to tell you if they like it or not, if it's approved, and then it goes through that process. It's a lengthy process.
And if they don't like it, or
If they don't like it, they send it back and say, no, this is what you gotta fix.
Okay, that's it, then I go to another session, because that's for me not feasible.
Right, but this, you see, is different. This, you're using a third-party company that's basically going to give you a toolkit to be able to upload it much faster. You still have to go through the process of Apple saying it's okay, but you alleviate having to buy a Mac, you don't have to buy the SDK, you don't have to buy any of that other stuff. So you shorten the process.
Check out PhoneGet if you're interested. It's free and comes with documentation which I think also describes the process of what you need to do, so you get an idea of what's ahead of you. Okay. Actually, I'm at the end of my presentation already. As I said, I left some parts out, but this is it. Any more questions?
You have more time? You have more time? You seem to be at the end of your presentation. Do you have time for questions? Because I have questions about CXP, but you said that's not what this is about, right?
Okay. I have time now, but because I'm early.
Oh, you're early.
I think so.
CXP, it requires a web adapter of some type, WAV, ISS, nothing like that?
CXP sits in the web server, that's all you need. You need
Oh,
a web
yeah, that's
server.
right, because somebody was telling me that it sat on top of or something like that. It doesn't. It's its own web server.
It sits on the web server, it gets installed in a way so that the IIS, for example, can access the stuff. There's a link.
No, but that's what I'm asking you. You still have to have a web server like IIS.
Yes.
That's what I was asking.
Okay, so
You still have to have IIS. How about Apache instead?
that's support as well.
Do you have support for that?
You can use in fact, any web server that supports fast CDI. So it could be everything, but in this case it's more work because the installer doesn't manage this end automatically. And the installer is about the IIS and Apache.
Okay, and so it's still using CGI technology.
Fast
That goes
CGI
way back.
technology.
CGI. I haven't used that. I used to use the old CGI years ago. I haven't done that for a long time.
Similar protocol, but it's much
Great.
more.
One other question. Have you talked to Morris about putting it into XBNet?
Hold on for a second, please.
Okay.
But if that makes sense for you, can you hear what he's asking, or there's a private discussion at the moment?
Especially the last question he asked. I was waiting to ask you the same question. I make web services in XB2Net as a component of Boris. Can I link CXP into my XB2Net application?
Okay, so you're both asking?
Yeah, no, but we're asking the same question. We use XB2Net exclusively for our applications. I've been using it for years. And I know that Morris has looked at your CXP product. And he made some negative comments about it. And I want to know if you've been in communication with him in a way that you can possibly integrate XB2Net with your CXP and eliminate the need to have IIS or Apache. We're just wondering about that. Has there been any discussions about that?
I'm not sure if there were discussions going on between Stefan and Boris. I'm sure there were. I don't know about it.
You don't know? Okay.
But
okay.
we are taking a different route with the CXP because right now it's really ancient.
Yeah.
We're using this for web pages, but in the long run, we want to integrate this in the product. There's the runtime bit, also build management, which is very attractive for us. Just changing the source and get it compiled automatically. For example, this is something we need elsewhere. So this is part of a larger strategy.
I see.
It's not just
I see.
Giving you a certain feature.
Yeah, I understand.
We are going somewhere with this, so okay.
This will CXP work like a normal
Sorry, I can't hear you. I cannot hear you twice.
CXP will work like a normal CGI or fast CGI.
Yeah.
So it can be how also from
Sorry.
it can become by XB2Net like another fast CGI.
That may be possible. I haven't tried it. Should be possible.
Yeah, I think it will not be a trouble because it's just a standard mechanism of transport.
Yeah. I don't see the point of it really, but it's something you can try. Yes. There was some other question, I think, in the back row. No? Thanks for your attention.
One more question.
Yes.
You said this is a larger, CXP has a much larger vision. Can I assume, is part of that larger vision to eliminate the web browser that's third to the web server? Third-party web services, the big thing, CXP also become a web server. Is that part of the larger vision?
That's part of the vision, at least in the sense that